What is going on, everybody? It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video. Per request of a couple people, like I've already done my NHL bracket, I'm going to go ahead today in this video and do my NBA playoff bracket for this upcoming 2022-2023 season. This is obviously a very early prediction, still in October. Regular season hasn't even kicked off yet, and I'm already predicting which teams are going to make the playoffs and who ultimately is going to win that NBA championship. But let's get right into these rankings and to this playoff bracket. But before we do that, I'm just going to quickly recap on each of my Eastern Conference and Western Conference standings respectively. I've already made videos kind of deep diving in more of a deeper analysis for each and every single team and why I had them ranked in these specific positions. But anyway, I'll just rile them off here. The Bucks I have winning the Eastern Conference, 54 wins. Right behind them, I got the Celtics. Still think they're going to be good even with the the coaching change for this season. I got the Sixers in third. Still think they're a very solid team. Miami, I have them taking a slight step back, but still being a top 4 team in the East. I still think they're pretty deep enough to do that. And with Eric Spoelstra, behind the bench, they'll be just fine. Cleveland, I have taken a pretty big step forward, being a top 5 team in the East. Fully healthy, I think they are capable of doing that. Toronto's a solid team as ever. They should be roughly a 6th seed. I can easily see them being a bit higher, as well as the Atlanta Hawks. I got them in 7th. I got the Bulls in 8th. The Lonzo Ball injury, that could impact them a little bit, so they could probably experience a little bit of setback. And then, the 9th seed, I got the Nets, which is a huge hot take. But again, I've explained all my reasonings. I'm just not fully sold on that team internally overall. So I got them in 9th. I got the Knicks sneaking into the play-in tournament in 10th. Wizards not far back, but missing out in the 11th seed. Pistons, Magic having better seasons, but falling in the 12th and 13th spots. And Hornets have them taking a massive step back. Second worst team in the East. And following that up, the Indiana Pacers I have as the worst team in the Eastern Conference. And quickly recapping my West, I do have the Clippers as the 1 seed. Even if there's could be some load management thing with Kawhi Leonard, I still think they have maybe the deepest roster in the NBA, and I think they're going to rile off a lot of wins, even if their stars aren't playing every single game. I got the Warriors in 2nd, defending NBA champions. That video surfaced recently of Draymond Green getting into it with Jordan Poole. I don't know how that affects their team chemistry, but I still think they'll be just fine from it and be a championship contender. So I still think they'll be fine in the regular season. It's just that's maybe something to keep an eye on. We'll see about that, though. I got the Suns in 3rd. I know a lot of people are not super high on this team. They're going to regress. I do think they're not going to win 60 again, but I still think they're capable of being a top 3 team in the East as long as Chris Paul doesn't take a significant step back in terms of his age. He might decline a bit, but I still think the Suns will be solid, even though there is some weird vibes going around them. I still kind of like their team. I got Memphis at 4. John Morant leading the crew there. Jaren Jackson being out for a little bit could impact their seeding a little bit, but I still think they're capable of being a top team in the West. I got Denver in 5th. Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. coming back to be a much better team. They should be knocking on the door for about 50 wins. Minnesota, New Orleans, 6 and 7 respectively. You can flip-flop those two. Those are 2 teams I could easily see being higher. Just their ceilings are very high. With adding Rudy Gobert is going to make the Timberwolves a lot better. Anthony Edwards on the up and up. And of course, Zion coming back for the Pelicans. They could be a team that challenges for a top 4, top 3 spot in the West potentially. Got the Mavs only in 8th. Just not really a fan of what they have around Luka Doncic. I just think the West is so much better, and I could see them maybe struggling a little bit more than they did last year. They were a 50-win team. I don't really have them that far off, but just how amazing the West is going to be, in my opinion. This is a team I could easily see being a little bit lower in the standings, but still being good enough to make the playoffs. Lakers I got in 9th. Again, the West is really tough. I think they'll be a little bit better, but I'm still not fully sold on the roster as a whole. Trailblazers I think are decent. They'll probably be the 10th seed, sneak into that play-in tournament. Kings in 11th. I think they're on the upswing, but still I think they have a little bit of ways to go before they can really be a significant threat in the West. And then the 4 tanking teams, Utah, Oklahoma City, Houston, and San Antonio, respectively, the bottom 4 teams in the Western Conference. So getting into how I believe the NBA playoffs is going to shape out, let's kick things off with the play-in tournament here. So first up, we got the 9th seed Los Angeles Lakers against the 10th seed Portland Trailblazers. Winner of that game has an opportunity to grab that 8th seed in the official playoffs, and the loser, of course, is eliminated. And maybe we're kicking things off with a little bit of a hot take, but I actually have the Trailblazers upsetting the Lakers in this matchup, even though the Lakers would have home court advantage here. I just look at, a guy like Damian Lillard. He's extremely clutch. He's a guy who could single-handedly carry his team to the postseason. And if his team does get into the play-in tournament, which I expect they will, the Portland Trailblazers are a sneaky, really just a weird team to judge. I honestly think there's a very huge possibility that they could make a little bit of noise. We'll see though. But I have them beating the Lakers just because although I do think LeBron James is going to be LeBron, I don't really trust the rest of that roster. Who knows if Anthony Davis will be fully healthy and if he's even fully effective. Russell Westbrook, we all know the experiment didn't work out last season, and this season we'll see if he's any better. I don't like the roster. I just think the Trailblazers have a deeper roster. Even, if you take away Dame from the equation, I just think they have a lot more depth on the roster with Jeremy Grant, who they added. They also have Yusuf Nurkic, who I still think is a really solid center if he's fully healthy. I just think Portland has the weapons to win a playoff game, and especially if Dame goes off, they can pull off the upset. And the battle between the Pelicans and the Mavericks for that 7th seed, I do have the Pelicans taking that game on the home court there. Zion Williamson, I think he's going to be explosive in that game. Again, I just think the Pelicans have a deeper roster. I mean, I still kind of like what the Mavs have defensively. I think they have a lot of very solid, versatile wing defenders. But apart from that, outside of Luka, I just don't trust where they could be getting their offense from. Whereas New Orleans, I think they are equally just as good of a defensive team. You got Alvarado, I think is just a pest, one of the better defensive point guards in the league. You got Herb Jones as well, who's one of the better defensive players as well. As a rookie, he already showed he has the capability of, have a all NBA defensive upside, right? And then, of course, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram. There's just more scoring threats there. So I think the New Orleans Pelicans would win that play-in game and clinch that 7th seed officially. And the battle for the 8th seed, ultimately, I do have Dallas edging out the Trailblazers on the home court there. Luka Doncic, obviously, I do think the Mavs are going to struggle a little bit more than most people, but I still think they're good enough to make the playoffs. Luka will be the difference maker in that game, even though Damian Lillard could easily pull off another upset. I think Luka is going to do his thing on the offensive end, and then I just think they're a good enough defensive team to really hold off the Trailblazers' weapons. They have pretty decent shooters, Alfred Simons and Josh Hart, and even Gary Payton, just solid defensively. I think the Portland Trailblazers, are a little bit of an underrated team, but I ultimately think Dallas is good enough to make the playoffs. Only as an 8th seed, though, but they will get in my opinion. Getting into my 9-10 match between the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks, I'm not really going to spend much time on this. I think Brooklyn, even though I have them struggling in the regular season, I still think that they're head and shoulders above the New York Knicks. I just think they're going to out-talent them. The Knicks are just not good enough, in my opinion, to make the playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets, if fully healthy, if they play the way that most expect them to, I think they are potentially a championship contender. So, if they are fully healthy in a play-in tournament, I think they can easily come out of it and take out the Knicks pretty easily, in my opinion. And as for the Hawks versus the Bulls, I got the Hawks on home court, winning that game to clinch the 7th seed officially. Trae Young, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella. They have a ton of great weapons, an underrated team, a very young core with a bright future. And again, if the Bulls, they have that injury problem with Lonzo Ball, I don't know if he's going to miss a significant amount of time, but it's possible he could miss the entire season. They say that his knee is pretty bad, so we'll see with him. Vucevic, I don't think is a great defender. Zach LaVine, DeRozan, do we see peak DeRozan? I'm just not sure if they can hold off the offense that the Hawks have, especially with their struggles defensively. So I think Atlanta would be the favorite in that game. Given if that is the 7-8 matchup in the play-in tournament, I think the Hawks would take it. In between the Bulls and Nets for that 8th seed, I do have the Brooklyn Nets taking it there. Again, if this comes down to health and just pure talent, I think the Nets are going to out-talent them. Although, like I said, I think the Bulls could potentially finish higher in the standings, but that's just maybe me disrespecting the Nets and just not believing in them. But I think the Nets, ultimately, I think they are going to find a way to make the playoffs. Again, don't trust the Bulls defensively, especially if Lonzo Ball is not going to be healthy. And Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, Joe Harris, Seth Curry. It's hard to really bet against the Nets offensively there. So I think that they will prevail in that play-in game and clinch the 8th seed and make the playoffs. With that, let's get into my NBA 2023 playoff bracket here. You look at all the seedings here. I have them lined up perfectly. I got the Clippers against the Mavs in the first round, Grizzlies, Nuggets as the 4-5 matchup, the Warriors and Pelicans as the 2-7, Suns and Timberwolves as the 3-6 to round out the West. Out east, the Bucks versus the Nets as a 1-8 matchup in the first round. That could be a crazy series. Who knows there? Heat and Cavs I have as the 4-5 matchup. I got the Celtics and the Hawks as the 2-7. And rounding out the East, the 76ers and Raptors, a rematch from last year's playoffs, this time as a 3-6 matchup. We're kicking things off with the Clippers and Mavs as that 1-8 matchup in the West. I do have the Clippers edging out the Mavericks in 6 games. Obviously, like I said, I think the Mavs are good enough to make the playoffs, but I'm not fully sold on their depth. Outside of Luka Doncic, though, he is an elite offensive player. He could be an MVP guy if he has like triple-double type stats and carries his Mavs to the playoffs. I can easily see that happening. But ultimately, I think the Clippers are just deeper. They're a much better defensive team and just have so many more offensive weapons. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Robert Covington, Norman Powell, Luke Kennard, John Wall. I just think there's so many more notable names on the Clippers. And although I think Luka's capable of pushing that series to 6 games, maybe even go the distance, I think the Clippers are just way too deep on both ends of the court, and they will edge out the Mavs in 6 games. Next up, the Grizzlies and Nuggets first round series. I have that series going the distance. I think 2 of these teams are very competitive and are going to be really, really nice to watch. They both have super young cores. Easily, I could see either of those teams going deep into the playoffs. Even Memphis, I think they're very underrated. But I ultimately have the Nuggets edging out the Memphis Grizzlies in 7 games. Honestly, I think the Nikola Jokic factor could be the difference. Just an MVP caliber player in Game 7, just betting against him, maybe not the best idea. Although the Grizzlies have some great players and a ton of great depth. Outside of John Morant, you got Jaren Jackson Jr., who's probably going to be healthy by the playoffs unless he gets injured again, but we don't want to project that, obviously. Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks and just a bunch of really amazing guys on Memphis. But I think especially with the return of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., I think once they settle in, come playoff time, I think they're going to show what they really are, what they were before they got hurt, especially Jamal Murray. He's had a history of performing really well in the playoffs, so I think the Nuggets will edge out that series, but I think it's going to be one of the better series in the first round. Between Golden State and the Pelicans, I am going with the Warriors here to beat the Pelicans, but I believe the Pelicans have what it takes to push that series to the brink and go 7 games. Now, I still think the Warriors are head and shoulders the better team. They have just the better shooters, better all-around team. I think they won the championship last year. I see no reason why they shouldn't go at the very least on a very deep playoff run once again. But I just think the Pelicans, they're going to show that, they're on the rise. Like they're coming. They're coming very soon. They're gonna give the Warriors a little bit of a scare, in my opinion. I think Zion is going to dominate that series. Just a plethora of great depth. CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, the great defenders that they have on that team. They're going to give the Warriors a little bit of run for their money, but ultimately I still have the Warriors edging them out. Steph Curry being the ultimate difference, going to shoot the lights out in that series, and they will advance to the second round. And here we go. I got the upset here. The Timberwolves over the Phoenix Suns in that first round. Like I mentioned, I still think the Phoenix Suns will be good enough in the regular season. However, in the playoffs, I don't necessarily trust them. I think, last year we saw how Chris Paul was exposed on the defensive end. Devin Booker is going to have to carry a lot of the load in that playoff series. I just think the Timberwolves are just a young team, and I think they have the recipe this season to actually make some noise. If they make the playoffs, I think they could do quite some damage given the right matchup. And I think against the Suns, I think there's potential they could pull off an upset here. Adding Rudy Gobert is going to, tremendously improve their defense, and that could be an ultimate difference. Maybe, that's the reason why they would end up shutting down the Phoenix Suns in this series. Anthony Edwards, having a massive breakout season. Karl Anthony Towns is still a great offensive player. D'Angelo Russell, very solid as well. I think the Timberwolves have what it takes. I think they're hungry. They're a young team, and I think they could make some noise this season legitimately in the playoffs. Between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets, although I alluded to maybe it being more competitive, I do have the Bucks taking that series in 5, although you could argue the Nets are maybe the most talented roster in the NBA when you have all the players that they do. I do think, coming down to it on the defensive end, I think the Bucks are just far and away the superior team, and I think the Bucks can hold them off on the offense because they do have Giannis, who's going to dominate as well, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. They got a ton of really solid players, but when it comes down to the defensive end, Milwaukee is going to find ways to shut them down and just take advantage of certain matchups from guys who are not the greatest defensively on the Nets, and they will be able to take that series in 5. I just think the Bucks have championship pedigree, and they will definitely prove it in that series. Next up, I got the Cavs upsetting the Heat in the first round. I still like the Heat, and I think they are capable of doing, some good things. I mean, last year they were in the Eastern Conference Finals and basically a Jimmy Butler three-pointer make away from an NBA Finals appearance. So, it would have been their second in 3 years, but I just think the Cavs, man, I think kind of like the Timberwolves, I think they're young, they're hungry, and I think they're going to really surprise some people this year. Now, they might not be a top team in the East. I mean, it's possible in the regular season, but I'm not fully sold on that. But in the playoffs, I do think they have what it takes to go far. When you add Donovan Mitchell to the equation, that is going to improve their shooting and their offense greatly alongside Darius Garland. That's one of the better backcourts in the league, in my opinion. And they also have one of the better front courts on the defensive end in Evan Mobley, who could have a massive sophomore season, as well as Jared Allen, who did make the All-Star team last year, right? So, yeah, I think they have just the weapons offensively and defensively to complement them. And the Heat, I just think they're an older team. I'm not really sure, if Kyle Lowry is, maybe his best basketball is behind him. Jimmy Butler is entering his mid-30s, although he steps up in the playoffs. I don't know. I kind of like the Cavs in this series, more of an upset, but I think they have what it takes to pull off an upset 6-game series win. I mean, a 4-5 matchup is, I guess you wouldn't really consider that an upset because a 5 seed is just equally as good as a 4 seed when it all comes down to it. But I got the Cavs winning that series in an upset. Got to pick a little bit of upsets. I don't want every higher seed to win. It's just kind of boring that way. I don't do that shit. So got the Cavs winning. Next up, I got the Celtics versus the Hawks. And to be frank, I think the Celtics would definitely sweep that series. Not to say that the Hawks aren't capable of winning a couple of games, but I just think the Celtics, their advantage comes on the defensive end. I just think they're far and away superior. And even though, the Hawks have a ton of great offensive players like Trae Young and, DeAndre Hunter, maybe he can step up his game in the playoffs like he did last year. I think, obviously the Celtics are just so deep offensively. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, you got Grant Williams off the bench, Al Horford, even Robert Williams, one of the better defensive centers in the league. They just got a ton of great depth. Even Malcolm Brogdon, who they added in the offseason, is going to be an amazing guy off the bench. Marcus Smart, too. The Celtics are just overwhelmingly too good for a team like the Hawks to contain, in my opinion. I think they're going to just blow by them in the first round. No disrespect, but I think the Boston Celtics are a legit contender, and I don't think the Hawks would really stand a chance in that series. Moving on, ending off the first round matchups here. I got the Sixers over the Raptors in 6 games, just like it was last season. I do like the Raptors team, and I think they have the potential to be a lot better than this, but I just think the Philadelphia 76ers are the better team. Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey breaking out potentially. James Harden, I think, is going to have a much better season than he did last year in his tenure with Philly. Tobias Harris is a walking bucket. I just think the Sixers have what it takes to really go deep in the playoffs. I'm actually pretty high on them. And the Raptors, it really depends where they're seated and how well they play, but I think just the lack of shooting might come to bite them in this series, and I just think the Philadelphia 76ers will have their way with them, especially Joel Embiid is probably going to make his mark on this series once again and take out the Raptors. But the Raptors are obviously going to make it competitive. They're one of the better 3-and-D teams, I guess. Defensively, they are just a ton of wing defenders. They're going to be a hard out for sure. Tough out, I would say. But 76ers I have winning that series in 6. Moving on to the second round between the Clippers and the Nuggets. I got the Clippers in 6 games. I love what the Nuggets are doing. And I think, not too far down the line, I do think they could legitimately win an NBA title. However, again, the Clippers are just way too deep. I think defensively, that's the difference in my opinion. Jokic is not really the greatest defender. They don't really have a ton of amazing defenders on that team. Although they have a really young team in the bright future, I definitely think it is the Clippers' time to kind of do something, especially if Kawhi and Paul George are healthy. I think they have just the team overall to take out the Nuggets, and they're definitely already a favorite to win an NBA title, or one of the favorites. So I think it only makes sense that they go deep and take out the Nuggets and go on to the Western Conference Final. For the other matchup in the West, I got the Warriors over the Timberwolves in 5 games. I kind of think it's kind of a bad matchup for Minnesota. I just think the Warriors are I think they're a very solid, underrated defensive team with Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green. They just have a ton of great glue guys. I mean, we saw them, how they won the championship. They were underrated defensively, but also they shoot the lights out. And I don't think the Timberwolves have great perimeter defenders. I just don't know who's going to guard Steph Curry, and especially Klay Thompson if he gets back to that all-star level that he was before he ultimately got injured. I think it's just a bad matchup, and I think the Warriors should be still, again, another one of those favorites to win an NBA title. So let's set up a Clippers and Warriors Western Conference Finals. If that happens, I would love to see it. Second round out east, the Bucks versus the Cavs is what I'm projecting as the second round matchup, and I do have the Bucks winning that series, but I have the Cavs going the distance there. I think they can really match them well, especially defensively in the interior. I think they have the capabilities with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to maybe cause some problems for a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I do think there could be some struggles there offensively between both teams. I think it's more going to be more of a defensive series, more of a defensive struggle, right? So yeah, I think the Cavs have what it takes to take it to get 7 games, but ultimately in Game 7, I do have the Bucks winning this series. I just think they're just deeper team overall. You know, they've been there before they won a championship. I don't think the Cavs are ready to really go on a deep playoff run. I just think the Bucks, when it's all said and done, will edge out the Cavs and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is my upset for the second round. I got the 76ers edging out the Boston Celtics in 7 games. Logically speaking, I would think that the Boston Celtics would be the favorite in the series. I would argue they are the deeper team. This, I'm kind of just throwing a little bit of logic out the window. I kind of need to put an upset in here. And to me, I don't know. I have a feeling that the 76ers are gonna finally get over that second round hump and actually go on a pretty deep playoff run. I like the 1-2 punch of James Harden and Joel Embiid. I really believe that James Harden is going to elevate his game, finally produce a little bit more in the playoffs. I mean, that might be a little bit tough to say as of right now because he's yet to really show what he is fully in the playoffs. He's always had his struggles, but I think they have the capability, and I think a guy like Tyrese Maxey is someone who can just step up in these moments. I mean, we saw glimpses of that last season in the playoffs, and I think he can do that again. So yeah, I'm just going with the upset. Not really putting much logic into it. I just think 76ers, they have what it takes to go deeper than most people think, so I have them advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. My Western Conference Finals matchup between the Clippers and the Warriors. In 6 games, I got the Clippers advancing and knocking out the defending NBA champions. Again, I think the offense, I think the Clippers are an amazing deep team, like I keep mentioning. And although I think it could be a little bit of an issue to contain the hot, elite level shooters in Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson for the Warriors, I do think the Clippers have a plethora of amazing offensive weapons to kind of cancel that out a little bit, somewhat, maybe not completely, but also I think the defensive end, I think, is the ultimate difference. I can see a guy like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George really having their way with some of the elite offensive players when it's all said and done. And look, I just think the Clippers have maybe the best, most deepest roster in the NBA, so I'm really high on them, and I think they have the capabilities of being a team like the Golden State Warriors, as elite as they are. I think the Clippers have the opportunity to advance to the NBA Finals, and that is exactly what I'm predicting. And I guess you guys probably figured this out by now. My sleeper pick to go to the NBA Finals, the Philadelphia 76ers. I got them edging out the Bucks in 6 games. This is really the battle of the bigs between Giannis and Joel Embiid, but I do think the Sixers have what it takes to take out the Bucks in this series. Obviously, we all know the Bucks are a very versatile defensive team, but I do think the Sixers have what it takes to match them, especially just with Joel Embiid in the perimeter. I think that could be an amazing matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals between him and Giannis. That would be really awesome to see. But I definitely think that, I don't know, maybe there's more offensive upside in Philly. That might be a bit of a hot take, but I just think Philly has the opportunity. They have the capabilities of going really deep into the playoffs, and I think they have the matchup to take out the Milwaukee Bucks here. So I'm going to say they're going to go to the NBA Finals and just kind of be my sleeper team. Like I said, I always like to have some hot takes in here, so maybe at this stage there's not really a lot of logic, especially out east, but I'm going with Philly, so deal with it. Whatever, I don't care. But ultimately, you kind of saw this coming. I got the Clippers winning the NBA title in 2023, edging out the 76ers in 5 games. I think if it comes down to depth at this point, I think the Clippers are just the deepest team in the league. And I've mentioned this all video, but honestly, I just think it is pretty true. I just think they have just to complete the package of offensive and defensive weapons. That combination is just going to be lethal come playoff time. They have just an amazing group of guys there. And even like last season without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, they managed to finish above 500, and they added guys like Robert Covington and Norman Powell at the trade deadline. I just think they have all the weapons in the world to finally win an NBA championship and prove all the haters wrong that they are the second coming to the Lakers. Now, obviously their franchise is not as rich, but I think they're going to finally put that narrative away that being like playoff chokers. I mean, they did go to an Eastern Conference Finals without Kawhi Leonard a couple years back, but I think they just have the capabilities of being the next NBA champions. And I just think Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, just an amazing two-way duo that probably the best two-way duo in the league. And I think if they are fully healthy, the Clippers will be your NBA champions. With that, that is going to wrap up my official playoff predictions for this upcoming 2022-2023 NBA season. Let me know your picks in the comments section. I mean, if you would like to engage, let me know, first of all, who you think would make the playoffs in the West and the East, and basically give me your title winners, your finalists. Let me know how you see the playoffs going in your estimation. And would love to hear all your thoughts in the comments. As always, I appreciate all the engagement, appreciate the support. We just hit like 100 subscribers, which isn't really a huge number, all things considered, but you know, it's a step in the right direction. I am trying to grow the channel a little bit, try to expand my horizons a bit in the sports world, cover hockey, basketball. We'll see what happens as this channel goes along. But anyway, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for watching this video. Your support is very much appreciated. And yeah, talk to you guys in the next one.